All right, so let's dive into something kind of intense today. And this whole world of AI.
Yeah.
And we're not just talking, like lines of code here. We're
No.
talking about like a potential AI arms race
Yeah,
between the US and China.
definitely an arms race. And it's not about, robots and lasers.
Right.
It's about control and influence and potentially even warfare in the future.
Okay, so where do we even begin with something this big?
Well, right now, all eyes are on this Chinese-developed AI system
Okay.
called DeepSeek AI.
DeepSeek.
It's causing so much concern that the U.S. is considering some serious restrictions,
Wow.
maybe even a total ban.
So that's our deep dive today.
Yeah.
What exactly is DeepSeek AI and what makes it so different from all the other AI
Right.
we hear about like all the time?
So DeepSeek AI is built on this advanced natural language processing
Okay.
and deep learning. To put it simply, it can understand and generate human language.
So it can.
Yeah, it can talk. It can learn from huge amounts of data and automate these complex tasks. Think about it like this. Imagine if you combine the language skills of ChatGPT
Right.
with the data crunching power of something like Google's Gemini.
Okay.
That's the kind of league we're talking about here.
Wow. Okay, so it's clearly powerful, but what are the specific concerns that have the U.S. government
All right.
like so worried?
So they've got a few major concerns.
Yeah.
First, there's the data privacy issue. Imagine DeepSeek being used to just collect this massive amount of data on
Okay.
U.S. citizens, effectively becoming like this surveillance tool
Oh, wow.
on a scale we haven't seen before.
Right. We all know how valuable data is these days. Whoever controls it
Exactly.
has the power.
Absolutely. And that leads to the second concern, intellectual property theft.
Okay.
So imagine DeepSeek being used to steal trade secrets or designs
Wow.
or other valuable information from U.S. companies.
Yeah.
That could be devastating to the economy
Yeah.
and to American businesses.
So this isn't just about protecting citizens.
No.
It's also about protecting American businesses
Yes,
and innovation.
exactly. And then there's the big looming question,
Yeah.
misuse.
Right.
What if DeepSeek is used for things like launching cyber attacks or spreading misinformation or even manipulating financial markets?
Wow.
These are very real possibilities with AI this powerful.
Okay, so we've got data privacy, intellectual property theft,
Yeah.
and the potential for misuse.
Uh-huh.
These are serious concerns, but is this really a new thing?
Yeah.
I mean, haven't we seen similar concerns about other Chinese tech companies
Right.
like Huawei and TikTok?
You're right. This isn't a sudden shift.
Okay.
The DeepSeek situation is part of this growing pattern of suspicion and distrust between the U.S. and China when it comes to technology.
Right.
Think back to the debates around Huawei's 5G equipment and the attempts to ban TikTok.
Yeah.
These cases highlight a deepening divide and this sense that technology is becoming the main battleground in their global power struggle.
It sounds like a strategic chess match, with each side trying to protect their interests
Right.
and gain an advantage
Exactly.
in this new world of tech.
Precisely. And that leads us to the heart of the matter.
Okay.
Should the U.S. ban DeepSeek AI?
That's the question.
The arguments are complex, and there's no easy answer.
So let's break it down. What are the arguments in favor of banning DeepSeek?
Okay.
What makes it seem so risky?
One of the main arguments in favor of a ban focuses on China's control over its tech sector.
Okay.
So people worry that the Chinese government could just force DeepSeek to hand over any data it collects.
Right.
That would essentially give them access to a massive amount of information on U.S. citizens and businesses.
And that's especially concerning when you consider how AI could be used to spread misinformation.
Yes.
Especially during something like an election.
Exactly. Imagine AI-powered campaigns churning out hyper-realistic fake news or targeting specific groups with tailored propaganda.
Oh, wow.
It's a real threat.
Yeah.
And policymakers are trying to figure out how to deal with it.
Okay, so on the one hand, we have those national security concerns pushing for a ban,
Right.
but there have to be arguments against a ban too, right?
Of course.
I mean, a ban seems pretty drastic.
Critics of a ban warn about the dangers of what they call tech isolationism.
Tech isolationism.
They argue that if the U.S. cuts itself off from foreign AI development,
Yeah.
it could hurt American companies that rely on global collaboration
Right.
and stifle innovation.
It's a balancing act
Exactly.
between protecting national interests and staying competitive in this global technology race.
Exactly. And there's always the risk of retaliation from China.
Oh,
If the U.S. bans DeepSeek, China could respond by restricting important companies or technologies
right.
that could lead to a kind of tech Cold War,
Right.
which wouldn't be good for anyone.
It sounds like we're caught in a very tough spot.
Yeah.
But what really strikes me is that this isn't just about DeepSeek.
Right.
It's about how we manage this incredible technology on a global scale.
That's a great point. This situation with DeepSeek is forcing us to confront some fundamental questions
Yeah.
about AI and national security and the future of technology.
It feels like we're at a crossroads. This could go in a lot of different directions. Where do we even go from here?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
It is a big question.
Yeah, it is a big question. It feels like we're standing at the edge of something massive. This whole situation with DeepSeek is making us confront some really big questions about AI and national security and where technology is taking us.
It is a pivotal moment, that's for sure. This isn't just a tech issue. It's about how we manage AI on a global scale.
Yeah.
Considering all the ethical and political challenges that come with it, we're talking about issues that could reshape everything from national security to how our economies work, even down to the basic fabric of our societies.
So what are some of the possible paths forward? What could the future look like if AI becomes this central piece in the global power struggle?
Well, one possibility is that this technological divide between the US and China just keeps getting deeper. Each side could retreat into its own little tech bubble, developing its own AI systems, setting its own rules, and eventually creating two separate digital worlds.
Like a digital iron curtain almost.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the values and principles baked into these systems. If you have two separate AI ecosystems, they could end up reflecting very different ideas about privacy, freedom of speech, and the role of government.
That's a pretty unsettling thought. What would that kind of divided world actually mean for us?
Well, for one thing, it could make it much harder to collaborate and cooperate on the big global challenges we all face. Think about issues like climate change, pandemics, or cybersecurity. These are things that need international cooperation and sharing of data to solve effectively. A fragmented tech landscape could really get in the way of that.
So it's not just about competition. It's also about losing opportunities to work together for the greater good.
Exactly. And from an economic standpoint, a divided tech world could stifle innovation and lead to inefficiencies. Imagine companies having to navigate two entirely different sets of regulations and standards. It could hinder growth and limit the benefits we could be reaping from technological advancements.
It's starting to sound like a pretty bleak outlook. Is there any hope for a more positive outcome here?
There's always hope. Another possibility is that the US and China find a way to manage this competition in a more constructive way. Maybe they could establish some clear ground rules for AI development, agree on ethical standards, and find common ground where they can actually collaborate on shared
So
interests.
it's not about eliminating competition altogether. It's more about finding ways to compete responsibly and fairly.
Exactly. And this is where international organizations like the United Nations could play a crucial role.
Yeah.
They could help facilitate dialogue, build trust between nations, and maybe even help set some global norms for how we govern AI.
That sounds like a tall order, but incredibly important for the future.
It is, and it's not just up to governments and international organizations. Private companies, researchers, and even everyday citizens have a role to play in shaping how AI develops. We all have a responsibility to make sure AI is developed and used in a way that's ethical and benefits humanity.
Let's circle back to DeepSeek for a moment. If the U.S. decides not to ban it outright, what are some safeguards they could put in place to minimize those risks we talked about earlier?
That's a great question. One approach could be to focus on data security and privacy regulations. For example, they could require DeepSeek to store data on U.S. servers where it would be subject to U.S. law. Or they could implement strict audits to ensure the company is complying with privacy standards.
So basically setting clear boundaries and demanding transparency in how data is being collected, stored, and used.
Exactly. Another safeguard would be to promote responsible use and ethical guidelines. They could work with DeepSeek's developers to ensure the system is designed and used in a way that minimizes the risks of bias, discrimination, or malicious applications.
It sounds like it would take a multifaceted approach, addressing data security, ethical considerations, and even international cooperation.
You're absolutely right. This isn't a simple problem with a simple solution. It needs a comprehensive and well-thought-out response. There's no magic bullet. But by tackling it from multiple angles, we can improve the chances of harnessing AI's power for good while mitigating the risks.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the potential DeepSeek ban to this larger U.S.-China tech competition and the need for global cooperation on AI. It's amazing how this one case study brings to light some of the biggest questions facing us right now.
That's what's so fascinating about these deep dives. We start with a specific topic and then quickly realize it's connected to this whole web of issues and trends that are shaping our future.
I'm definitely feeling a bit overwhelmed by all this information, but I'm also really energized by how important this conversation is.
That's understandable. These are heavy topics, but they're also incredibly exciting because they force us to think critically about the kind of world we want to build and what role technology will play in it.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you think our listeners should keep in mind as they try to navigate this complex landscape?
It's important to remember that this is an evolving story. AI is advancing rapidly, and the global landscape is always shifting. So staying informed, engaging in these discussions, and being ready to adapt to new developments is key.
That's great advice. Stay curious, stay informed, and don't be afraid to ask the tough questions.
Exactly. The future of AI isn't predetermined. It's something we as a global society have the power to shape. The decisions we make today will have a huge impact on the world we leave behind.
I think that's a powerful message to end on. The future of AI isn't set in stone. It's something we can actively shape through our choices and actions. It's definitely a lot to think about. But before we wrap up, I want to bring it back to DeepSeek
Right?
and the decision facing the U.S.
Yeah.
If they decide not to ban it outright,
Okay.
what other options are even on the table? What could a different approach look like?
So policymakers are considering a few alternatives.
Okay.
One option is to implement targeted restrictions instead of a blanket ban.
Interesting.
This could mean like limiting DeepSeek's use in specific sectors,
Okay.
like government or defense,
Right.
where the perceived risks are highest.
So more of a proceed with caution approach,
Exactly.
allowing the technology, but with some very strong guardrails in place.
Right.
Okay.
Another option is to shift the focus to boosting American AI development
Right.
and competitiveness.
Okay.
So this could involve investing heavily in AI research,
Okay.
creating incentives for U.S. companies to develop their own AI solutions,
Right.
and fostering innovation within the private sector.
So instead of just trying to block or restrict Chinese AI,
Right.
they'd be focusing on like winning the race themselves.
Exactly.
Yep.
And a third option is to take a more collaborative approach
Oh,
with
yeah.
international partners.
Interesting.
This might involve working with other countries to develop shared standards
Yep.
and guidelines for AI development,
Okay.
promoting ethical use,
Right.
and finding ways to manage the risks together.
It seems like each of these options has its own set of advantages
Uh-huh.
and disadvantages.
Well-
What are some of the key factors that policymakers will have to weigh as they make this decision?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is finding the right balance between national security
Right.
and economic competitiveness.
Right.
How do you protect your interests without stifling innovation or putting your own companies at a disadvantage?
Right.
It's a delicate balancing act.
For sure. And then there's the whole issue of international relations.
Yeah.
No one wants to make a move that could escalate tensions
Right.
or trigger a tech Cold War with China.
Absolutely. Policymakers also have to consider the ethical implications of their decisions.
Right.
What kind of world are we creating with AI?
Yeah.
What values and principles should guide its development and use?
Right.
These are fundamental questions we need to be asking ourselves.
It really highlights how complex this issue is. There are no easy answers here. It's a decision with huge implications, and it's going to require a lot of careful consideration.
And that's why it's so important to have these conversations
Yeah.
and encourage informed public debate.
For sure.
The more we understand these issues,
Right.
the better equipped we'll be to make informed choices and
Yeah.
shape the future of AI in a way that benefits everyone.
So to our listener, here's something to consider. If the U.S. decides not to ban DeepSeek, what safeguards do you think should be put in place?
Right.
What are the most important things to keep in mind as we navigate this new world of AI?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Join the conversation on our social media channels, and let's keep exploring these questions together. After all, the future of AI isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we're all creating one decision at a time.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into AI geopolitics and the choices that will shape our future. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking those tough questions.